The shutdown didn't come with flashing lights or emergency alerts. No dramatic announcement. No televised statement. Just a procedural move from the Supreme Court that quietly changed the balance of power. And in Washington, silence from the court is never empty. It's deliberate. It's controlled. And it usually means the justices believe something has crossed from political theater into institutional risk. For Donald Trump, this was unfamiliar territory. He has battled prosecutors, judges, congressional committees, and media storms, but the Supreme Court operates on a different frequency. It doesn't argue. It doesn't posture. It simply draws lines. And this time, the line appeared right as a private deal connected to Melania and Trump surfaced through a leak that no one was prepared to explain away. What mattered wasn't outrage. It was timing. The deal emerged during a sensitive phase of Trump's legal trajectory, when procedural defenses and jurisdictional arguments were becoming more important than public messaging. Legal experts immediately noted that even a perfectly legal agreement can become problematic if it appears to overlap with active legal pressure. Courts don't need proof of wrongdoing to act, only the possibility of contamination. The Supreme Court's move effectively froze a pathway Trump's legal team had been counting on. Not a conviction. Not a judgment, a stop. And stops are dangerous because they don't argue facts, they question structure. Once structure is questioned, everything built on it becomes unstable. Inside Trump's orbit, the mood shifted. Advisors who once spoke in absolutes began speaking in contingencies. Words like if and depending replaced certainty. That's not collapse, but it's not dominance either. It's adjustment under pressure, and Melania's silence amplified everything. No clarification, no denial, no explanation. In elite legal conflicts, silence isn't innocence or guilt, it's space. And space invites interpretation. The court didn't accuse anyone, but it didn't need to. By intervening quietly, it signaled that whatever was unfolding could not be allowed to influence the integrity of the process. That alone was enough to change the game. Once the signal was sent, the system responded. Lower courts became more cautious. Filings tightened. Arguments narrowed. Prosecutors didn't rush, but they didn't retreat either. When the Supreme Court steps in this way, it doesn't just affect one case. It recalibrates the entire environment around it. Trump's strategy has always relied on motion appeals, delays, venue shifts, parallel arguments. But containment neutralizes motion. It turns open terrain into controlled corridors. And corridors don't allow improvisation. They demand precision. That's where pressure builds. Political allies noticed it too. Not publicly. No one wants to be the first to say it out loud, but privately, conversations changed. The question stopped being, how do we fight this? And became, how exposed are we if this deepens? That's the moment when loyalty becomes conditional. Donors are especially sensitive to this kind of shift. Not the loud supporters, but the institutional ones. They don't react to headlines, they react to risk indicators. Supreme Court concern is one of the strongest indicators there is. It doesn't predict loss, but it signals uncertainty. And uncertainty freezes momentum. Trump's public messaging stayed aggressive, but the undertone evolved. more emphasis on legacy, on history, on being remembered correctly. That's not accidental language. It suggests awareness that outcomes may no longer be fully controllable. And still, Melania remained silent. The deal itself, whatever its purpose, had now become secondary. What mattered was perception. In law, perception of influence can be as damaging as influence itself. The Supreme Court's job isn't to determine motives, it's to preserve trust. Once trust is threatened, intervention becomes inevitable. This is how institutions protect themselves. Not by confrontation, but by limitation. Trump wasn't removed from the field, but the field was reshaped around him.